Hi, everybody. This is the IDR meeting, and this is our starting time. So if everybody can find a seat, settle down, bring your conversation to an end, and so on. While you're doing that, if somebody would be willing to volunteer to take notes and somebody else would be willing to volunteer to keep an eye on the jabber room, I would really appreciate it, especially because, as you can see, there is only one chair sitting up here and not two. I definitely won't be chairing the meeting and taking notes at the same time. So. Anyone who can take some notes? Gee, thank you very much. And thank you very much for everything else that you've done to make this meeting happen, by the way. I would like to point out that without G's work, we probably wouldn't have an agenda this time. Thank you. Okay. If somebody would also keep an eye on the jabber room, that would be excellent. I'm not going to hold the meeting up while we wait, though. So this is IDR, which once stood for interdomain routing and now stands for anything you can stuff into port 179. So let's talk about that stuff. Let the record show that AC is in the jabber room. Thank you, AC. Which means he gets to jump the line if he's carrying questions from the jabber room. We have a new note well. It's different from the one at the last meeting. So you may think you know what it says, but you may actually not. It's not my job to explain it to you. It's your lawyer's job. Or it's your job to read it to yourself. But if you want someone to explain it to you and tell you what it means, talk to your lawyer. But do read it. It matters. So several orders of business for the chairs this time. First of all, just to repeat for those who are still filtering in, Sue will not be here this time. She was expecting to, but had a last-minute illness. Hope she gets well soon. And I'm sure many of you would also like to send her a get well soon hope. Hopefully she'll be back online in the near future. So this slide comes to us from the MPLS chairs, who much like many of you who have authored documents in IDR may have encountered the fact that the security directorate likes us to have real security sections. One of the things they want to know about is transport security. And they get extremely testy about the fact that MD5 is unhip, deprecated, and so they say insecure and unfit for use by self-respecting people. And this makes it difficult to advance drafts. Tends to make extra work for us and for them, actually, because it takes two to tango or to argue. So the MPLS folks have to deal with this also, as do several other groups. And so from their perspective, their issue is LDP uses MD5 as its transport security. Low is written authentication. And and as I said, MD5 is unhip. They're looking at TCP/AO, and it says a yet to be decided cryptographic mechanism. I don't know what that means either, but I'm going to go find out on Thursday what it means. And they would like to coordinate with us as well as a large handful of other working groups. So if you have opinions about this, thoughts, would like to provide feedback on how the IETF moves forward and doesn't spend a lot of time churning every single time we have to advance a draft, I encourage you to go to the MPLS meeting on Thursday to discuss it. Alvaro.
Hi, Alvaro Retana, Routing ID. So yes, it's true. We get a lot of pushback from security guys because in many cases, what we write is this extension to BGP doesn't change the security considerations of 4271. And that is true many times. It is not true other times. Security obviously wants everything completely protected. I think there are other operational realities that we have to deal with. And it is an operational reality that not everyone runs authenticated in their networks. And that maybe we use MD5 for other things, not necessarily authentication of BGP sessions, but to make sure that the AI didn't fat finger their configuration, for example. So we have been talking to the security ADs for a while. In fact, back in Singapore, we had a meeting with them and with the routing area chairs to start talking about this. And what we agreed on is to start some kind of effort to better communicate with them, what are the circumstances and the issues that we see? Because I personally think that it's not just a matter of documenting new mechanisms. I mean, we can specify anything we want. TCP/MD5, or not TCP/AO has been specified for many years. And in the RFC, it actually says, well, maybe BGP should use that, even though it didn't make it mandatory. But it's a matter of implementation and deployment of the things. So what we agreed with them, and Deborah Bremgard, the other AD, is leading this effort, is we agreed to document scenarios and I'm going to call them use cases for security considerations in routing. So that when we say things like, well, it's okay if I don't authenticate because I'm running inside a single domain. What does that mean? I mean, we maybe understand, or we think we understand what that means, but what are the assumptions that we're meaning there so that they can feel better about saying, oh, okay, it's okay if you didn't add some extra encryption to your protocol. We hope, and this is sort of a stretch goal, that we might come up with some templates that we can say, oh, look at that, here's an IGP or here's BGP, copy that template and put it in the security considerations so that the security area knows what this is. This happens periodically because periodically we change ADs, so the next AD is going to come and ask us the same questions. And so we decided that it would be a good chance to document some of these things. This all doesn't mean that we shouldn't do new work or that we should never worry about security again, and much less that we shouldn't at least mention security considerations. If there's something that could happen because you put some extra bits in a packet, well, bad things could happen if you put extra bits and someone changes them. So maybe we write that down and say, well, yes, but I'm running inside my single domain, so it's okay. So yes, please go to the MPLS session if you really care about this. Please talk to Deborah if you have more thoughts or ideas or want to participate in defining guidelines, use cases, whatever we're going to call them. This may end up in a document. It will most probably end up in a wiki somewhere where we can all go and say, here's the security considerations, and put them there and add then specifics for your document.
Clarification question?
Yes.
So as far as I understand, which I don't know a whole lot more than what's written on this slide, at MPLS, they're going to be talking about this draft and stuff closely surrounding this draft. What you're talking about now is a separate additional effort. This draft relates to it,
yes.
but this is so we can go to MPLS and talk about this. We can find Deborah and talk to her
about the bigger effort. Yes.
The bigger approach. Okay.
Yes. The other place that
is she thinking? I mean, you're not her, but of having like some kind of a set time to, because there's probably more than one person who maybe would like to talk to her about it.
I am not Deborah, and so I don't know the answer to that either. Yes. What I do know is that I think Stuart.
He's chairing another meeting or something right now.
Okay, so Stuart is one of the authors of this draft, and I think he asked for time in SAG. SAG is the security area. SAG? Well, whatever. SAG means something about security area, open meeting.
It means spinach, I believe.
Okay. So they're going to talk about there as well to get some guidance on that TBD cryptographic mechanism, because apparently the TCP/AO RFC doesn't actually mandate what the crypto should be. So, they're going there to get some guidance on what should we put there. I mean, do we put SHA, whatever, or something else, to get guidance there. Now, I think, again, these are good things. I think the implementation and deployment realities are different than us just producing security documents and getting all the cryptography in there in place. Okay, thank you.
Jeff, I was in ignorance of the machinations of our ADs. I had done a presentation at IEPG this Sunday specifically on this topic. For anybody who is interested in seeing the slides, you can see those at iepg.org.
Would you mind sending a URL to the list?
Yes.
Thank you. Wait, yes, that means you would mind. Okay, so next topic. As people who have been watching the list will have noticed, of course, as part of meeting prep, I was doing some quick catch up. And this led me to want to say a few things because, apparently we always say things about code point allocations these days. And what I want to say this time is that we're using FCFS more, which is great, and early allocation, which is great. Kind of the next thing is to start to think about where we introduce bottlenecks into those processes and how we could avoid it. And there are two specific things I noticed. One is if you request an out-of-sequence code point, FCFS, then you get punted onto the exception path. Basically, IANA says, "Chairs, you okay with this?" So then you get funneled through two chairs who sometimes respond quickly and sometimes don't. And the second thing is that we have this lovely RFC 8126 guidelines for writing an IANA consideration section. And I'm sure that everybody here has read all 46 pages of it. But and that you review it every time you write a new draft to make sure that your IANA considerations section is good. But just in case you have not read all 46 pages, section 1.3 has a checklist which is about a page long, and if you go and review that checklist before you ask for your code point allocation, there's a much greater chance that you won't be asked to clarify what it is that you're actually asking for. Oftentimes authors think they have asked for something that's clear, and it usually is clear if you're a subject matter expert and have carefully read the entire draft, but it's not at all clear if you're not all of those things. And guess what? The IANA people don't actually want to read your draft in detail to understand what it is you're asking for. That's why there's a separate section. So these are the two, not so much requests from the chairs, but suggestions from the chairs to make things move smoothly, which is have a clear IANA consideration section. It's actually not that painful. And, on the FCFS stuff, sorry to back up a slide, I think the main reason why we get these out-of-sequence requests is that people have done, a little, what I'm sure they believe is benign code point squatting. And mostly for FCFS registries, once you're ready to actually do your implementation, just request the code point already. So that's it for those. And related to that, we have one pending early allocation request that I know of right now, which is this one. And it does need an update, and then we should move it right along. So I don't think that will take too long, assuming the authors are responsive on that one. Yeah, so this is the sort of document status section, and I don't necessarily claim that I have caught everything. So this is a good time to pay attention or go back and review the slides later. If you have a draft that you're wondering, John, why haven't you acted on my draft? Because I've been waiting for a long time. You might go and see if the name of your draft is on here, and if not, ping me either on the list or Unicast or in the hallway or whatever makes you most comfortable. So we have several working group last calls pending. We've got the segment routing X04 scheduled to end in 2 days. So far it looks well supported. There was some discussion on the list about semantic validation of TLVs. I am not sure if that's fully concluded or not. But right now, if I had to make the call, I would say there's consensus to advance it, but I would also go back and check that semantic validation discussion in more detail to make sure that has closed in a satisfactory way. There's a request for TE PM BGP. It's been asked for. I'll start it tomorrow. And then there was a last call for extended messages a few months ago. And that had a bazillion messages on it, and the last call was inconclusive, shall we say. There was, yeah, I'm not going to comment more except to say that we'll try to figure out how to unbreak that logjam. Okay, and then prefix SID, I sent something on to the list on this too. So we had a last call on that, and it made it most of the way through the ISG, and then it came back to us with some comments to fix. AC did the fixes, and it got sent back out. It was a big change, which was to take out the V6 SID, and everybody I think knew about that because that was flagged as being like, here, this is the big change. Or there were some editorial changes, which when I read through them, I was like, okay, well, that's fine. That's just an improvement. It's not a normative change. But there was one, small normative change. It did stem out of the discussion on the list, which is great. But I didn't see that, that there was like actually a thing to the list that said, hey, by the way, based on the conversation, I made this change. So I've sent a thing to the list pointing this out, and I'm pointing it out here also, which is that the version 16 text had an either or option for what to do if you get multiple prefixes with the same label index. The new version takes away the either or, and it just says do it one way. Speaking personally, I like do it one way better than a menu of options. So I'm happy with that, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody knows about this. You've been warned. In particular, if you have an implementation that does the one or the other version, and you will feel upset to have that text jerked out from under you, you'd better speak up soon, because otherwise we will apply the silent gives consent rule and move forward. Okay, there's a whole bunch of stuff where we concluded a working group last call, and it's waiting for something. Mostly it's waiting for a document shepherd to finish their work. On one, the optimal route reflection document, the document shepherd is done and sent a bunch of questions and comments to the authors, and I never got an answer to that. So, hey authors, that's it for me. So next is Sriram. What?
Oh, I see.
Yeah, you've got your version there.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Sriram, and this is about route leaks solution. jointly co-authored with, the draft is co-authored together with Doug Montgomery, Brian Dixon, Kayur, and Andrei Repshowski. So we recently uploaded a 08 draft, and this slide points out what the differences are compared to the 07 version, the previous version. The new draft primarily focuses on the RLP, which stands for Route Leak Protection Solution, and this RLP solution is an inter-AS multi-hop solution, as opposed to another draft that is also currently progressing through the IDR, that is the IDR BGP Open Policy Draft. And that draft covers the intra-AS or local AS solution. So what do you do within an AS locally to prevent route leaks? And the draft that I'm talking about focuses on what do you do when a route leak goes across ASs? How do the ASs coordinate to detect and then stop the route leak or block it? What we have done, the big change we have made in this draft, in this new revision, is first thing to just focus on the RLP solution in the main body of the draft. Second thing, there are a number of useful other sections. Those sections have been moved into the appendices, and the reason for that is those relate to things which are not required to describe the solution. So they contain things like related prior work review, design rationale, and discussion. So over the last 2 or 3 years that this draft has been active in this group, there have been many questions and a lot of interesting discussion. So that section captures those aspects, the questions as well as the design rationale, the discussions in this working group, as also in the group working group prior to this. There's a stopgap solution section in the appendices. You can take a look at that. Intra-AS solution, there was good discussion about that using community on the DANOG list, and we had that historically in the draft, so we are still keeping it. This uses community, and the DANOG discussion was very informative, very helpful. So we captured the essence of that into this section here, the intra-AS leak prevention with the community. So just to recall, like what is the problem we are addressing here? ISP, in this picture, ISP1 or AS1 sends a prefix route to the customer. The customer leaks it to the other transit ISP it has. So customer is multi-homed and it leaks it to the second transit ISP. The second transit ISP doesn't catch that it's a leak, and it propagates it to its peers and other neighbors, providers, customers. So what can be done here so that ISP1 can put in some indication, and even if the customer is clueless about route leaks and any route leak solution that's available intra-AS or what have you, what can ISP1 put in the update so that ISP2 can catch that it is a route leak? Before we go to the solution, a real-world incident, there are many which happen once every few months or so. So in this incident, Google peers with Hathaway and shares a whole bunch of prefixes, and Hathaway leaked over 300 of them to its transit provider, Airtel. Airtel didn't catch it, and the leak propagated to level 3, Orange, and so on. And as a result, many Google users in Europe, their data traffic was routed through Airtel and Hathaway, and it got dropped on the floor. So this sort of thing happens often. So what could have Google done? So Google and Airtel can coordinate if Hathaway is not participating yet, or if they are clueless about it. They can use this RLP field encoding in the sending router. So the sending router uses a 2-bit field, and this field can be carried in a transitive per hop attribute in BGP, or in the flags field in BGP-sec when we have BGP-sec available down the road. The RLP field value can be 00, default value, which means that nothing specified, which in turn means that the route can be propagated to a customer, transit provider, or lateral peer, no restrictions. 0-1 means that the sender is saying that please don't send it to a transit provider, subsequently. So I send it to a customer or a peer at this point, but subsequently, it should not propagate to a transit provider or a peer. So if it comes to you from one of your customers or one of your peers and it has the 0-1 indication, then you regard it as a route leak. So the solution, just to provide some more insight into it, it works this way. It's been a while, so I'm just doing a quick review of this, although you have heard this before. The AS1 is propagating prefix P. It puts in a RLP, AS1, which means that I'm AS1 and I put RLP indication to 1. It sends it to AS2 and also to AS4. And they propagate it to AS3. AS3 is a transit provider of AS2. So AS2 is leaking the route. And AS3 now has two choices. One of them is clean. The RLP bit is set to 1, and it is coming from a transit provider. So AS3 is receiving from AS4, and both RLP fields are set to 1, which means that, yes, it can continue to propagate towards customer. That's fine. So AS3 can accept that. But the other update from AS2 has also has RLP set to 1 from AS1. So AS3 knows that it's coming from a customer, and another transit provider said that if it comes from your customer, then be aware it could be a route leak. So AS3 can distinguish between these two updates, and it can discard the suspicious one, which is from the customer, and accept the one from the transit provider AS4. So it can prioritize and eliminate the route leak. The RLP attribute the RLP values are put in an optional transitive attribute. So each AS that is participating can put this tuple AS number and the RLP value. So partial deployment, in partial deployment, it works fine. So non-participating ASS will not put anything in here, and it is transitive. And the way, the effectiveness of it, 99% of the vertical axis is the route leaks that are not detected in terms of percentage, and the horizontal axis is the three different scenarios: current BGP with the proposed RLP, and BGP sec with the proposed RLP. So basically, the 99% that are accidental route leaks are prevented right away if you do the proposed RLP, and if it is secured with BGP sec, then also the malicious attacks are prevented. So this applies in general to even BGP sec. Building blocks, at the bottom you start off with out-of-band communication, which tells you what your peers, what the relationship is with your peer, their AS number, interface IP, etc. The BGP open, the BGP role capability negotiation that is done with the help of the other draft, the BGP open policy draft, that allows you to confirm the relationship. At that point, you can automatically set the peering relationship for each peer, and you can do it per prefix if you wish. Then on top of that, we have the two components, the intra-AS prevention solution, that is the IOTC, same draft again. IOTC is internal only to customer attribute. So that tells you that, that you need to look at the other draft for that, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with that. The other component of the solution is what I have described, the RLP solution, which works across AS boundaries. So it's a multi-hop intra-AS solution. And finally, you can add security on top of it. When BGP sec is available, we can insert the RLP values into the BGP sec flags, and that takes care of the security part of it. So those are the building blocks. And just to look at this final slide once again, if you have partial deployment, and if you have major ISPs that are willing and ready to deploy it as soon as the technology is available, and let's say that those major ISPs are AS1 through AS5 in this example, so the prefix P propagates from AS5's customer cone, and it goes across a peer-to-peer AS1. And if in AS1's customer cone it leaks and it goes into AS2's customer cone, or even it might turn around and come back to AS1 on another customer interface, in either case, either AS1 or AS2 are able to detect that it's a route leak and they can stop it. So by doing that, it is not propagating from across these ISPs. So these are participating ISPs. They essentially form a ring of security. And leaks can happen if their customers are not yet upgraded. Leaks can happen locally within the customer cone, but they won't propagate across one ISP's customer cone into another. So that is the advantage of early adoption, benefit with early adoption, and it encourages deployment. Thank you. Appreciate some questions or comments.
Alexander Azimov, Curator Labs. First of all, I'm really glad to see that you finally linked your draft to open policy. It's good news. But there is another draft that you haven't mentioned. And in this draft, there is different design of what you call RLP. And while you required that it should be pairs of values, there is only one value. And comparing the properties of these attributes, the pairs, a set of pairs does not bring anything than complexity. Second,
are you talking about the flag, the single flag attribute that you use?
Yes, I'm speaking about IOTC. The second thing is that in your draft, the side effects of this technology are not mentioned, and they are important to mention.
What's not mentioned?
Because both EOTC and RLP are given a hints about relations between autonomous systems. And for some ISPs, it may create a concern. A year ago, I invited you privately for a discussion to merge these drafts and to create one draft which will be some kind of joint solution. And today I'll try to do it publicly. So I invite you one more time to merge these ideas, to create single draft, and to ship it quickly, because the problem is really very important. Thank you.
Thank you for the comment. So let me address the question about the concern about ISPs disclosing their AS relationships. So that's been this draft has been in the working group in Grow first, and then in IDR for probably the last 3 years now, at least since 2015 or so, and we had a number of discussions about the disclosing AS relationships. So that question and the discussion in the working group is very well captured in the discussion, the appendices that I mentioned. So I would like to request you and everyone else who is interested to take a look at that. The second question about merging the true drafts, yes, we welcome that, and we are looking. So the draft you mentioned that is relatively new. This has been there for 3 years. The draft you mentioned is relatively new. So we are very much welcome to, and we have discussed it. It's not that we haven't talked about it.
I'm trying to tell you to stop arguing about that. Who was the first to stand up? I'm trying to tell you. Let's do a proper solution. That's all.
I'm not allowed to mention a timeline of the two drafts. No. No,
okay. Yeah,
my point is this: we are very much willing to work, and the chairs can guide us how to
right.
proceed.
So I think I heard Alex say that he wants to work with you, and I think you just said that you want to work with him. So I'm so happy. Kumbaya. Please do it.
Right. So all right. Yeah. So nothing to be nervous about. We can work together.
Maybe you can do it this week, because face-to-face time is very valuable, and here we all are. And I would like to agree with Alex's comment that, this seems like important work. And if it's important work, let's actually get it to a stage where actually that sort of preempted a question I was going to ask, which is, at what point do we sort of say, this is ready, let's start pushing people to implement and deploy?
So the main difference is that we have per hop RLP values. And the other draft talks about a single flag value. So that's the key difference. Otherwise, the basic idea is the same. So we just need to talk about that and how which of those makes sense. And
Okay, I would like to ask the respective authors to try to have this discussion concluded before the next meeting, because can I just see an informal show of hands of first of all, how many people think they understand this, whether you've read the draft or not? I mean, there's detailed slides that you've just been presented, so a reasonable number of people think they understand what we're talking about. How many people think that this is something that they would consider either implementing in their implementation or deploying in their network? So again, that's enough hands to say that maybe we have enough thrust to actually do this thing. So yeah, please put a bow on it. And this is the kind of thing that we really can't proceed forward, on a pre-standard basis.
AC Lindum, Cisco Systems. I think what we will implement the solution that gets the traction. I mean, there looks like there are really 3 ways of doing this, proposals, and this is the most mature one based on timelines, and so.
Right, and this is why I'm asking the authors to, sort of finish up and put a bow on it. Okay, yeah, Jared, the mic's 4 feet from you.
Oh, no, yeah. You're not the Jared Moch from Akamai. I was just asking AC if he was interested in also addressing the implementations that they have that by default flood all the learned routes immediately out all the sessions as well, because that would also help mitigate this issue, which is a very common configuration thing. And it's been challenging for me as a customer of some of my equipment vendors in
Yes, perhaps you should publish an RFC on that subject.
Yes, there may even be some documentation for this, and I may have a bot that's been watching this for more than 10 years, documenting it every 15 minutes.
Point taken, but I don't want to take up more discussion time on that tangent right now.
Oh, okay, I won't. But I'll just say, AC Lindum, the path to backward compatibility, there will be probably an easier way to do this. I don't know if it'll be the default.
Okay, yeah. Anybody who wants to beat AC up, do it outside, because I think that, we have to pay a cleaning fee on the carpet. Any further questions or comments? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Please don't take the clicker away with you. Oh, thanks. Yeah.
Hi everyone, this is Gaurav Davra from LinkedIn. We're presenting SRv6 BGPLS extensions. We added quite a few authors who've shown interest. We merged with one other document from Huawei.
So just a point of order, or not point of order, I guess chair's privilege, whatever. Just, yeah, since you were so kindly mentioned your number of authors, please fix it.
Before asking for option. Yep. So there are 2 documents which I think is premise to understanding what the work is here. One is network programming. I highly encourage to read it. You can't hear me? Okay. And also there's a dependent document, service chaining document. What is the update in this? We presented 0.0 version in IETF 100, and the LSEP SIDs have been added for the SRv6. We also added the SRv6 end SIDs, which were removed from the prefixed document. We added the reference to OSPF v3, and then updated the TLVs to match the IGP encodings. Also, in the original document, we requested for function code points in this document, but we moved it out to the network programming document so that everything is in one central location. And as I mentioned earlier, we merged with the document which was proposed by MacGen, Huawei. So the node attribute TLVs, there are two TLVs which have been defined, the capability TLV and the node attribute TLV. It's mostly very basic, so I would encourage you to just read it. It's pretty straightforward, and I presented the same in IETF 100 as well. Node SID TLV, we added the NSID, originated from the BGP protocol. We added some function flags, which have now been incorporated into the main SID TLV. Earlier, it was part of the separate TLV, sub TLV. And we have also added a sub TLV, which is variable, where we can extend this to add more sub TLVs like service function TLVs for the discovery of service functions. For the link attribute, we have added the link attribute, renamed them to link attribute and link attribute LAN, and added two more link attribute TLVs, the peer nodes index SID and the peer set index SID. Peer node index SID is similar to what is defined for SRMPLS in that document, segment routing EPE. We have defined it in similar thing in the for SRv6. It indicates the cross connect layer 3 for the specific BGP session. And again, the function codes are defined in network programming documents. Peer set is similar to the previous one, and the only difference in this particular case, you're forwarding to the group of peer sets. And again, the function code point is in the main document, and we have also changed the TLVs to match the IGP TLVs. We're seeking input from working group, and any suggestions, comments are welcome. Questions?
If there are no questions, comments, then go on to your next one. And if you think of anything, he'll still be up front.
I'm still here. I'll fix the authors.
Thank you.
You remind me every time, so I'll do it next time. BGP extensions for SRv6 VPN. As I said, there are quite a few providers which are interested. Again, for this, we recommend to read two separate documents. The SRv6 network programming, again, it's a comprehensive document which talks about all the network programming and functions which we have defined, and the segment routing header, which is the basis for this whole work, and the prefixed document which AC was authoring. What do you want to do? Again, we want to enable the IPv6 data plane, segment routing, and we want to provide the VPN or global services on top of it. The goal of this whole document was to provide or reduce the overall brownfield migration deployments. We have presented the first cut of this document, which is L3 VPN over SRv6 in IETF 98 Chicago. How are we doing it? We're proposing a BGP extension. We are extending a prefixed attribute in the base prefixed document, and we're calling it SRv6 TLV. And it looks like this. So it has a SID type and a SID value associated with the VPN services which you'd want to signal using BGP. The VPN SID encoding, in this particular case, I'm specifically focusing on EVPN and global. In EVPN case, the type would be the type 1 will be corresponding to L3 VPN label, which we provide in the MPLS. And the type 2 will be corresponding to the EVPN label. In other words, type 1 is that end DX functions or DT functions, which is equivalent to the L3 services. And type 2 will be equivalent to the L2 services, which is provided by EVPN RFC. Again, just a reminder, the details are in that network programming document. So how does the encoding looks like? This is again basis of SRv6. So we have a locator, a function, and an argument. The locator is how do you route to that particular IP address. The function would be the VPN label, or in this particular case, it could be the L2 VPN or EVPN function equivalent. Argument is optional. In case of ESI filtering, we pass the argument too. So it's again detailed in the document very well. This is just an example. There is no fixed boundaries of any of these. It can change based on the vendor implementation. The baseline procedures which were defined in for 7432 has not been changed. We have just extended to attach this attribute for the cases where there is an MPLS label for the EVPN. We have attached an SRv6 SID to associate with it. And we also believe that it helps in the migration for the brownfield deployments, which is most of them out there. Example of the EVPN L3 encoding. So the top one shows the encoding which is there in the 7432 with the label as MPLS L3 VPN label. With the new case, you will have a BGP route type 5 with the implicit null, and you will attach the SRv6 VPN SID TLV, which will associate type 1, which I was showing earlier in the slide. And these are L3 functions, which could be DT6, DT4, DX6, or DX4. We also want to achieve a BGP free core. So we are associating the VPN information for the global AFIs as well, and for the L3 cases. And we just associate the SRv6 VPN TLV to that to achieve the BGP free core, and attach that to the base IPv4, IPv6 global NLRI, and send it with the IPv6 next hop. Again, seeking working group input and feedback, and any comments are welcome.
Hi, Ali Sajasi, Cisco. Few comments. First, this draft is about BGP enable L2 and L3 VPN services over SRv6. And by the way, last time I checked, there was a working group called BGP enable services. So the draft should be renamed, and I think it should be presented there because majority of the interest is going to be over there.
That's a good point.
Second, the draft introduces a new encapsulation, and that new encapsulation has a ramification on IPVPN and EVPN, RFC 7432 and 4364. And the draft gets into how to do this stuff without explaining what and why. Basically, I'm interested in knowing why we need a new encapsulation. What are the benefits of this new encapsulation? Why it cannot be done with the existing VXLAN and Geneva encapsulation? And to name a few. Then the next comment. It is basically the question is, what if, what about IPv4? Are we going to be using VXLAN and
Did you
Geneva
want to
for
pause to let him
IPv4?
respond, or did you want to respond?
Oh, sure.
My only response, Ali, is that the what and why we are doing it and motivation behind it is in the architecture documents for SR and also in the network programming documents. It's detailed pretty well over there. And if there's still something which we want to update further,
Can you summarize it in 2 sentences, why and what? I mean, because I didn't catch that.
The why and what is we want to integrate the VPN services with the TE services together.
Well, you can do that with sending EVPN and IPVPN perfectly over SRv6. Why do we have to mush the encapsulation together? I mean, do we get performance improvement? Do we get better, improvement in the encapsulation? If these are the case, we need to have discussions on. Okay. So then, should I continue?
I don't know. Should I find time for you in the agenda? How many more points do you have?
I think I got 3 more.
Tell you what, why don't you go to the back of the line, let the 2 people behind you make their points. They may have one point each, and then you'll still have some time to make your rest of your points.
Stephanie Kopsky from Orange, speaking as best working group chair. So yes, you absolutely need to present it in BESS. Unfortunately, this week we don't have any more slots available, so you would need to present it in Montreal.
Okay.
Would you be able to do a short ad for it during your chair slides? Just, a one-liner?
We are really, really full.
Okay, fine.
Maybe at the end of a session if we have more time.
Ivan?
Jorge Rabadan, Nokia. Yes, I have a few comments too, and some of them shared with Ali. So the first one is absolutely this has to be presented in BESS, and we already made a comment in IETF 98, and a few IETFs later, here we are again. That's the first one. The second one is a question. Do you or do you not mandate the advertisement of this SID TLV or a VPN SID TLV?
Do not mandate it. It depends on the originator itself, whether if the originator supports SRv6 function, then it will attach it. If it does not, then it's still a valid update.
So what you're saying is I can reuse the existing label field in the EVPN.
I'm not saying that. No. I said so the way the originator router can be MPLS and SRv6 enabled.
Right.
So in that case, it will use the label field and attach the attribute. What you asked was, do we mandate that? No, it's an optional transitive attribute. We don't.
But assuming that you want to use SRv6, which is the whole purpose of the document.
If you want to use SRv6, then yes, the router has to attach the SRv6 attribute, which will have the encoding to do the VPN services.
And that is for all the routes, all the EVPN routes, except for route type 4.
Right.
Now, reading the programming draft, it actually talks about encoding the ESI label in the extended community, in the existing type 1 extended community.
Right.
Which is, by the way, a great idea, and this is what I would suggest. However, this seems to be inconsistent with what you have in this draft.
We are actually using the argument field to do that.
Correct. And the programming draft says that you should signal that in an extended community.
Okay, I'll double check that. That's a good point. I'll double check whether.
But don't fix it.
If there is an
Just make it like that for all the VPN labels. So my final feedback would be, and something that I already discussed, is if you make this locator, sorry, not the locator, the function and the argument, you limit the length to 3 bytes each. You don't really need to have a new TLV. You don't need to create this new attribute, and you can actually make the the EVPN solution compatible with SRv6. And I forgot the last one is in EVPN we use the BGP encapsulation attribute or BGP encapsulation extended community to signal the from the egress P, the tunnel that we want to use, and also to let the ingress P know if we want to use a 20 or a 24-bit VPN label identifier. Now here you are doing something completely different. You are saying just by the fact that I am including this new TLV, I want to signal to the ingress P that it needs to use SRv6. So my question is why, and why cannot you use the encapsulation attribute or the extended community?
Implicitly signaling the SRv6 is itself saying that you want to use, based on the local policy on the ingress PE, tells you that whether you want to use SRv6 encapsulation or the VXLAN, right? So whether you want to use SRv6 encapsulation. So
no, well, you need to receive that piece of information.
The piece of
in the route to know whether you need your VPN identifier is 20 or 24 bits, right? So this is how we do it today.
Right.
Now you're saying no, we don't need that, and we are defining yet another way to signal the ingress P what label it has to use. So my question is, why don't you just signal the BGP encapsulation attribute or the extended community? And you include there the tunnel type.
Hey, folks, just a agenda check. We have just a few more minutes for discussion of this, so please keep your comments short and to the point. I
right.
think that it's very clear now that you are going to be presenting this at a future BES and/or discussing it on BES's list. So that is another opportunity for having, more detailed discussion.
So a couple of my comments got covered by Jorge, but he's saying that, okay, I asked for what and why, and then describe the how. And once we're convinced about the what and why we are doing these things, with respect to the how, Jorge is saying that why not, use the existing field in the route? Because if we go with the attribute, it's going to impact the BGP route packing. Why not we go with the existing EVPN method that doesn't have implication in the route packing, and we use the field, and we can use either 20 or 24 bit, and still you can go with the new encapsulation. So the question is two things: whether
How
we
is the
need
route packing different if you're using a per CE label or per VRF label or per ESI?
it is in the
same.
attribute instead of being
No,
in the
but it's
route.
the same attribute, right? So how is that different?
It
I mean,
is
you
a-
have an attribute and all the routes you're associated with it. The packing is as optimal as it is.
Okay, if it is
the
the same
EVPN
attribute,
case.
then that's fine. But the question is with respect to the how, if we decide to go with this new encapsulation, question is why not use the existing mechanism and convey the the seed as part of the existing EVPN route. Again, this is contingent on justification why we need the encapsulation. And there are implications. I'm going to be quick. I have a few more, but I'm going to skip those. Basically, there are implications with the E3, which is not being mentioned in the draft. There is a leaf indication bit, which is not there. How are we going to take care of it? And then finally, you go through the entire draft. It has all the EVPN routes in there. The procedure for all of them is simple. Set the EVPN label to explicit null, carry the seed in the attribute. You can mention that in one paragraph and say for all EVPN route, do that, and then you can, reduce the draft into a couple of pages. But again, these are all after we decide that this is a reasonable way of doing it. Is a reasonable encapsulation.
Keyur.
Yeah, Keyur Patel. I just have a meta comment. IDR working group is finalizing on a tunnel encapsulation attribute, I believe, that is carried for all the BGP address families. Please, let's not define any third mechanism, if possible.
All right, a lot of good feedback. Thank you, everybody.
All right, thanks.
Hi, Jim.
Hello, I'm Ajman from Thailand Telecom. Here what my presentation is, we want to search some solution for the intra-AS topology retrieve within our network. The content considers the 4 parts. First is the scenario that we encountered in our network and the requirement for the solution, and we also search for the current solution, compare to the current solution, and find it is not very suitable for our requirement. So we have propose some BGPLS extension to meet this requirement. Here is the general scenario. Within our network, we have the backbone network and hundreds of main and IDC network. The network are interconnected with each other via the bundle of links, and each main and IDC and backbone are in different IGP domain. Currently, we are deployment the SDN technology. So within this architecture, the SDN controller should know the overall topology between the different domain. So we need to collect the topology from each domain and also the inter-domain topology as well. The right part we have simplify the scenario. We have the two different IGP domain and may or may not run different IGP protocol. And within this underlying network, there may be deployment the traffic engineer, or in this scenario, the SDN controller should collect the topology information from the different domain via the current BGPLS technology, and also need to get the intra-S link information. For this scenario, we are seek some solution for the for commit this requirement. The first is we want to preload the current distributed protocol as unchangeable as possible. And the second part is we want to enhance the north-south protocol under the SDN architecture. And the third is we want to keep deployment as simple as possible because we have the hundreds of the IGP domain, and the last is the solution suitable for various scenarios. So we have search and compare the current solution for the scenario and the requirement. There are about 6 solutions that can fulfill part of our requirement. The first is the original BGP protocol, but it mainly focuses on the IGP topology within one domain, and there is no inter-S topology information. The second is the SREP. So in this solution, the SBR can report the inter-S links and node information. But if we adopt this solution, every SBR must run the BGPLS protocol. So they must build the BGP neighbor with route reflector or with the BGP with the SDN controller. So I think there are some deployment limitation. The third is there are some proposal for within the SR extension. So within this draft, they introduced the source router identifier TLOV to transfer the key information for the inter-S topology. But this solution is mainly for the ISS protocol, so it is for the underlying network must run the ISS protocol. There are another two RC that related to this scenarios within the ISS and OSPF TE. There are some extensions to transfer the information about the inter-S links and nodes. But it requirement our underlying network to deploy the TE technology within each domain. And even with deployment the TE technology and such information are not included in the current BGPLS information. So I think there is no solution to meet our scenario and requirement. The last is the PC native IP network. This draft is described scenario for scenario in deployment PC native IP, but there is no solution for the inter-S topology retrieval. So this is the kind of solution. I think there are some various limitations to meet our requirement. So here are our proposed BGP solution. The first is for the non-TE scenarios. In the non-TE scenario, it is described our underlying network does not deployment the TE technology. So in these scenarios, we just need to get the information about the originator of the inter-S prefix. I will explain later for the reason to acquire this information. This TLOV can get the information from a different protocol. First is the ISS. This is same as the current solution for the RFC 7794, and the next two is for the OSPF V2 or OSPF V3. So within this newly defined TLV, we can carry different carry the similar information for the different IGP protocol. The second proposal is the BGP LS extension. As I mentioned, that currently there are two RFC to describe the TLV that can carry the remote SE information and the remote SBRID information within the IGP protocol, but this information isn't be reported by the current BGP protocol. So we want to within a T scenario, we want to the BGP protocol to carry this information. So after we collect the information, so we want to know how to build the interest topology. It also in the two different scenarios. The first is the T scenario. Within the T scenario, I think it is very simple or very straightforward, because the PCSD controller can know the S and SBR information and also the T-link that are already included in the current BGP TLV, and it can also know the remote S and remote SBR information at newly proposed the current draft. For the non-T scenario, there are some steps to retrieve the information from the key information reported by the BGP protocol. Here I just make the illustrated graph and the procedure to retrieve the topology information. What we wanted is the red links at the between in the different domains. So the steps to reconstruction the interest topology is illustrated in the right graph. The first is PCE will collect the BGP topology respectively in the different domains. This can be, but the inter-S link are normally not included because we will not run the IGP protocol in the inter-S links. So normally we will redistribute the inter-S links on every SBR router to each domain. We must keep the interconnection within our underlying network. And currently, the redistributed route that is the prefix of the inter-S links can be included in the current BGP-LS NLR, but there is no information about the originator of these prefix. So we cannot anchor this prefix on the different SBRs. So we cannot, all the SDN controller cannot build the interest topology within the current BGP-LS information. So with our newly defined BGP-LS TLV, so the PCE can anchor the prefix to the corresponding SBR, and then the PCE can construct the interest topology when comparing the prefix and their anchors. So this is the topology, the construction process within the two different scenarios. So we also summarize our solution benefit for our current solution can fit mainly it is a general solution for the interest topology retrieval, and it did not depend on the protocol source of this prefix as anticipated by current BGP protocols. And PCE can retrieve the interest topology automatically according to the procedure requirement is practice and the audition information reported by the newly defined TLV. Okay.
AC Lind of Cisco Systems. I haven't read the draft, I'll admit that. So I saw you had the redistributed route originator. You know, in the RFC 7752 prefix, prefixes have both node descriptors and prefix descriptors, you know, which is just the prefix and length for the prefix descriptor, and maybe topology too, I can't recall. Why wouldn't the route originator just be the OSPF router ID or ISI system ID and the node descriptor? I don't think you need that new identifier. Too fast?
In current BGPS protocol at 7752, there is no prefix originator.
It would be the node descriptor, because why would you put anybody other than the node descriptor? I mean, why would you put anybody but the originator in the node descriptor? Why wouldn't you put the originator in there? I mean, that's what it should be. It's not going to be the BGP speaker. It doesn't need to be. I mean, the BGP speaker doesn't put his own node descriptors in there. He just happens to be the one of the BGP LS session to the controller.
So currently the BGPS protocol speaker just told the information it has. So it reports the node and link and prefix. The prefix is just in its routing tables. So it
doesn't have to be the one in the route. It can be the one in his link state data. It's the one he's getting.
No.
Usually, if you have an implementation, usually it's an OSPF. It's part of the OSPF routing domain, and at least for an AS external LS, I know OSPF a little better than ISIs.
I know.
And normally not normally, always for for regular areas, the AS external LSAs are flooded throughout the routing domain. And so the BGP speaker talking to the controller, to uniquely identify that prefix, he'd just take it out of his link state database, and he'd use the router ID or system ID of the router that originated. So you don't need an identifier. Maybe we should take this offline. We kind of seem to be in a circular discussion here.
Yeah, we have a break coming up right after this meeting, so you guys could even talk about it in 20 minutes.
Yeah. I just want to confirm what AC said. This is not required. You have it for OSPF, you have it in the node descriptor, like AC mentioned. And for ISIS, we have the source router ID, which is for the same purpose. So I think this is not required. But the inter-AS part is necessary. So that's a good one. Yeah.
The newly proposed TLV is similar with the kind of source router ID TLV. But this I have compared here. In the insert solution, the SREXT can introduce the one TLV to transfer this key information, but it is mainly for the IS protocol and it not cover other protocols. So here we just give the solution that can cover all scenarios on different protocols in our each domains. And currently, I know that for BGP protocol, the router run the BGP protocol non-originator of these prefix, but it did not report it to the SDN controller. So SDN controller do not know the originator of this prefix. So we cannot build the interest topology automatically.
Okay, and that's all we have time for now. Thank you.
Okay, so this is Jaedong from Huawei, and my presentation is about a new BGP extended community for identifying the target node. So we have courses from Huawei and Nokia. So here's the motivation. We know that BGP has been used for the distribution of various routing policy information. And in most cases, such kind of a distribution is to the whole network. But in some other use cases, the intended target node may be just one or several particular BGP nodes in the network. So for example, this in the BGP flow spec policy distribution, you may just want to distribute the policy to a particular node or several particular nodes. And currently, BGP does not have a mechanism to do this, to designating the target node for this routing information. Because BGP was designed for the point-to-multipoint distribution in the beginning. And currently, we have a route target mechanism, but that was used for the matching of VPN routes to the VRFs. So it's not a general mechanism for this purpose. So basically, this draft proposed a mechanism to control the distribution of BGP information to particular nodes in the network. So here's the proposed solution. When the network is using IPv4 address, so we need a new BGP extended community to carry the target node IP address. And this is very straightforward. Currently, we make it a transitive extended community because we're considering both intra-AS and inter-AS maybe in the future. And this extended community can be carried, this extended community can be carried in the update message to designate the target node and target nodes. And for IPv6, we need to define a new IPv6 address specific extended community to carry this target node. And it's also transitive, and one or more IPv6 node target communities can be carried in the update message. So currently, in the current version of the draft, we just give the procedure for the intra-AS scenario. The intra-AS case will still need further study, and we can have discussion about that. Basically, for the intra-AS scenario, on the originator, it needs to encode the target node's IPv4 or IPv6 addresses into this newly defined node target extended community and send it to in the update. On the receiving side, for the non-RR speakers, it just need to check this new extended community and to find whether it is the target node, whether this local node is a target node or not. And if this is the target node, the routing information carried in the update can be used by this node. Otherwise, it just need to discard this update message. And on the route reflectors, it is in addition to checking this local match, it also need to redistribute this received update to further to these clients. And the details are specified in the drafts. So after we submit this draft, we have already got some feedbacks, comments, and we'd like to discuss them here. The first one is, do we need to have an IPv6 node target? Because in many cases, the control plane may still be IPv4 based. But maybe we need to consider whether we should support the pure IPv6 network, in which case both the data plane and the control plane are all IPv6. And another one is maybe we need to add some restriction to the target IP addresses. For example, we can suggest to only use the BGP router ID in this target node. And so for this, one question is whether the BGP router ID can be used in the pure IPv6 networks. Maybe this deserves some separate discussion, but we list it as here for the discussion. Another thing is maybe if we want to support both IPv4 and IPv6 addresses, we can restrict the rules to only use the host IP addresses on the routers. Okay, the next question, comments is whether it should be transitive or non-transitive extended community. for the intra-AS case, I think maybe a non-trusted is also okay and maybe simpler because you don't need to do the filtering on the edge by you defining other additional mechanism. But that depends on whether we also need to cover the inter-AS scenario. So here are the next steps. So because this is just the 0.0 version draft, the most important thing is we need to identify whether this is a valid problem to be solved, and do we need to cover both IPv4 and IPv6, and whether we need to cover both intra-AS and inter-AS. And after this, we will discuss and polish this solution and together. So, any questions, comments?
Ali suggested, Cisco, can you go back to that extended community? Okay, the IPv6 is the target IPv6, not the originating IPv6. Okay. And are you sending this extended community with the route target or in lieu of the route target?
I think this is independent from the route target because they are doing a different, for different purpose, right? Route target was designed for the matching of VPN routes to the VRFs on the PE nodes, but this is a more generic mechanism for
right. Then how do you ensure that the receivers who
different types
with that target address, they're gonna just receive it?
You mean whether the receiver will mix this up with the route target, or can you repeat the question?
In BGP, because it is a push mechanism, I'm wondering that how do we ensure that this gets pushed to the specific target PE?
Yeah, I think before this reaches the target node, that should be keep advertising in the network. Yeah, it's using the.
Okay, we can take it offline.
Okay.
Jeff, I have a few comments. So your slide where you point out previous suggestions, router ID does probably make sense in a intra-AS scenario, partially because there's no guarantee that a given address on a router, you say use the collection of all addresses, there's no guarantee that those might be unique, especially if you're a VPN router. So in the intra-AS case, that works. It doesn't work for the inter-AS case, though. So there's some points of discussion there. Your procedure suggests that you discard these for route reflectors. If you're not a route reflector, confederations are also another case where you have to worry about that.
Okay.
And that also complicates your procedure for inter-AS.
Yes.
The biggest piece of feedback I would give is that your use case, the obvious use case is for things like flow spec. For flow spec, I don't think this is a good fit. The problem that you're probably attempting to solve is you're trying to say address this to a set of routers where you're enumerating them. What you're better off doing is trying to enumerate the set of interfaces that want to receive a filter or a set of routes. For that use case, you might want to consider the interface set draft that's currently active and see if that's a better fit for the scenario as well. Even if it isn't, perhaps consider that if you're trying to address a set of routers, that a group ID makes more sense than addressing it to a specific router.
Yes, thank you. I think the interface set draft is also another use case for this. Yeah, we can describe that in the next version.
Stefan Likowski from Orange. Sorry, I haven't read the draft yet, but I will do. I'm just wondering, how is it different from what we are currently doing, for example, in MVPN or EVPN procedures, where we are sending some updates that are targeted to a specific node? So, for example, in the explicit tracking for the MVPN leaves.
Yeah, you mean
it sounds really similar, and we are just using regular communities to do this.
Can you repeat? You're using.
We are using the existing IPv4 or extended communities, the route targets.
using the route targets, right?
Radio Volk, Deutsche Telekom. Essentially jumping on that, your claim that what you want to do, you don't have a mechanism in the current BGP, I think is false, like Stefan was pointing out. The thing is, when you actually use your policy configuration, of course, you can implement all kinds of weird filtering and so on. And with the expanded code space that we have available in the regular community attributes, you can do even more interesting things.
But you need to do the configuration on each node.
Yeah, well, okay, kind of. You need to essentially. Well, okay, there is a trade-off whether you rely on your vendors actually implementing all the stuff, or you set up your signaling system and code the policy on the router configurations yourself.
Yes.
Okay, and I have to call it done now. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
And last talk. We may run over a few minutes. I hope people will be patient. If you need to leave because you have another thing to go to, please try to step out quietly.
Okay. Hi, Ketan Talaulikar, to present this draft BGP-LS. So what does this draft propose? We have BGP-LS in RFC 7752 for northbound distribution of topology information T part. But the focus has been mainly on IGPs, how to do this from IGP networks. For the segment routing egress peer engineering use case, we first introduce the protocol BGP so that link state information from BGP could be advertised out. What this draft does is it specifies the mechanism, procedure for doing the network topology advertisement in a network that's running only BGP. So there is no IGP running, only BGP running. How do you advertise the topology out there? And why is this required? There are MSDCs which run BGP as the only protocol today, and RFC 7938 talked about this. In these networks, controllers do not have a view of the underlying link topology in the network, the traffic engineering information that's not available. Similar thing is there today with IGPs. Why do we need this information? Well, this can be used in a BGP only network for doing traffic engineering. There are use cases defined for with segment routing that you can do SRT in a MSDC. There's a informational draft which talks about that. So this draft also uses or talks about the use case where segment routing T paths are set up in these BGP only networks using the topology information that is advertised. So how is it done? Really, it's enabling BGP-LS on each BGP node in the network, and each of those routers advertise its own node links, prefix, and T policies out via BGP-LS. The draft specifies what are the BGP descriptors to be used for each of these different NLRI types, and also talks about the different existing BGP-LS attributes which are already defined in several other BGP-LS drafts, how they are to be advertised, the procedures, all of that. At this point in this 0.0 version, there are no new TLVs or additions described, but they may come in future versions. So what's the use case, or how is this seen to be used? So this is really talking about BGP SRT in a BGP only network. The red lines really are the links and show the paths which is available using the base BGP decision process. So let's say in this case, we have IPv4 label unicast with BGP prefix SID, and this provides really the the normal BGP path through the network. But in the use case where we want to engineer a specific flow via a certain path through the network, then that can be done by a controller. The controller now has the view of the entire topology, all the links, all the prefix SIDs for the nodes, all the T information. It just sets up a SRT policy on the node I here and says the prefix SID, which is go to, let's say, A, and then K, and then out forward. So the controller can instantiate this policy on let's say the Tor here, and this allows to do BGP SRT in existing BGP data centers. What is not changed, and the base BGP underlay is not changed here. So we still use, whether you have IPv4 or IPv6 or LU with SR or without SR, this follows the BGP decision process. That's the base thing not to use. Existing BGP peering models are continue to be used. The draft in this version focuses on the eBGP single hop mechanism, which is in RFC 7938. But future versions, we could have other peering models included based on the working group feedback. The BGP LS sessions are formed to a controller using the reachability that is provided by the underlay routing, right? And as I mentioned in the T use case, this is used for setting up the SR policies here. Just quickly, a couple of slides. So this is really the topology collection. The bottommost is the BGP routers and how they work. That's unaffected, no changes there. What's new is the BGP LS sessions that are set up from these router either to let's say a BGP speaker, like a centralized speaker, which is consolidating the feed from the routers and giving it to a controller, or it could go directly to a controller. So that's the new thing. The underlay is, as mentioned, it is unchanged. It is the base BGP. Final slide, quick look at what is the topology information, and the details are in the draft. But we have information about a node, which includes the node name, sRGB of the node, MSD of the node. And similarly, for the link level, we have the basic stuff, which is like the EPE SIDs or the peering SIDs, the link MSDs, but also we can add the T attributes for the links. These can be run even in a data center. The prefix information is really the node SID alone. And whenever policies are set up on any node, these can be exported also via BGP LS along with their binding segments, so that it can be used for traffic engineering. So this is just the first version. Look forward to review with the working group and comments, inputs.
Keyur Patel, I have a quick question, but before that, a disclaimer: I have not read this draft. As I understand from what you just said, there are no new TLVs defined, but it is used for a fabric definition. Is this just an informational document, or is this doing anything specifically that requires an interoperability or a standardization?
Yeah, so this is proposed to be standards track because it describes the procedures for encoding it for BGP only network. It's important to specify which exactly descriptors are needed for links, nodes in this thing, so there is interoperable.
So let me get it straight. But I may not choose to honor those procedures. I may just send everything in LS, and this should still work.
So as far as attributes is concerned, yes, you could send whatever. What's more important is that the links and nodes are described with the right descriptors, so that you can have the two-way check or the connection between
But
them.
that happens regardless, right?
If they are done differently by different implementation, then you would not be
Yeah.
able to correlate.
I'm really trying hard to figure out, do you have any standardization here, or is this just an informational storytelling? Which is perfectly fine, by the way.
So as I mentioned, the standardization is for the procedures in this version, but there may be new TLVs and things added in the upcoming version. Yeah. So right now it's mainly for the procedures and how to do the packing.
Okay, thank you. And thanks to everybody for sticking through to the end. And wherever the blue sheets are, I'd appreciate it if somebody would bring them up to the front or at least wave them around. Yeah, thank you and see you next time. Bye.
Say hello.